Dr. Mason West.
Welcome into this episode of Bare Bones. I am Mason West, taking you through this live reaction to the second round of the draft. We might do third, but in all reality, probably it's going to be the second round today. So what we're going to do, one, like I said, we're going to be reacting to the picks as they come in all the way through the Bears at 39 and 41, assuming that they're still going to be there. We'll also talk a little bit about what happened yesterday, react to that Colston Loveland pick, some of the other choices that were made throughout the NFL, and we're going to go from there. All right, first and foremost, as mentioned, the Bears ended up taking Michigan tight end Colston Loveland with their 10th overall pick. It was pretty interesting when you look at how that board fell, because it kind of went as you would expect, besides potentially the fact that the Jacksonville Jaguars did trade up, and they trade a lot, to go up with and go get Travis Hunter. So, great, having Cam Ward go first, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, all four of those pretty much straight up what you would think was going to happen. Even Mason Graham did 5. Pretty much exactly what people talked about for the most part leading up to the draft. Obviously, not thinking that the Browns would be the one making that pick. And you continue, right? And this is where it really matters more so for the Bears, having Ashton Genty go. I mean, I know a lot of people, myself included, was hoping he might fall. I don't think you needed to take a running back that early. However, I do think he is the best running back in this class. No, is he guaranteed to be a Saquon Barkley type? Like, no, he's not. But he's clearly well above the running backs that were taken. That are available in this draft, and certainly the same can be said about even some more recent drafts as well. He's a blue chip guy, but see, Levy didn't happen. So then again, as you'd expect, Armand Membu went. Kind of surprising, Ted McMillan going at 8, and then relief for me personally, just because I was not a huge fan. Not a huge fan. I didn't particularly want him in that scenario. It would be probably a better way to put it. Kelvin Banks Jr. going 9 to the Saints. So, at the end of the day, some people liked the idea of Banks, and I think part of that is more positional necessity than actually what he offered. I think he's a guard. There's a lot of individuals that fall in that group as well. For example, Dane Brugler has him as his guard 2. He didn't even rank him as a tackle. It's one of those things. It's pretty funny where ultimately the Bears situation with tackle is not as dire as some make it out to be. You have Braxton Jones. I'm fairly certain he will be ready for training camp from what I've been hearing and what I understand about the injury. Obviously, that can change. Progress is not linear. And at the end of the day, he is also a free agent going into next year. So is he a guy that you're going to want to pay? Like, the Dan Moore $85 million contract or whatever that was. That's a lot across 4 years, I believe. That's a lot of money. And has he played up to that? His biggest issues really have been more so injury-based. Neck issues at one point, now, his ankle. So getting a tackle that you can trust to potentially take over is ultimately important. Oh, and by the way, Cleveland officially, we did start here. They're on the clock. But that being said, right, Kelvin Banks, I see as a guard. I don't think you necessarily need to rush to fill him just because he had played left tackle. You truly get the best players on your board. So that brings us to Colston Loveland. Now, I was pretty vocal about this. I was a Tyler Warren over Colston Loveland guy, but I said 1A, 1B. They're very interchangeable, and the biggest thing for me in terms of why I had Colt Loveland behind, and we'll get into this a little bit as well, is the injury stuff. Right, he missed a game due to concussion. He had that shoulder injury that he had in early September, played through it the entire year. So I mean, if anyone's had an AC joint sprain injury of anything of that nature, it sucks. Every single movement you do forward, upwards with that shoulder, it's pretty terrible. And it's one that can, with rest, get better, but depending on the grade, it doesn't necessarily fully heal. So, he pushed through that all year long. He actually talked about that today in his press conference, that he wanted to, if anything, avoid surgery. I mean, who wants surgery? And then it got to the point where it's like, nope, you got to get it. And at the end of the day, it's about, in my opinion, Loveland has the higher ceiling while Warren might have the higher floor. Right now, if you started, a football game tomorrow, who would be the best player? It'd be Warren right now, right? He's overall just. I mean, he's also older. That's going to be a part of it. But that's also one of the good things about Loveland is he has so much that he can still grow into. Literally, his frame can grow more. In terms of what he was able to do at Michigan, I mean, that can improve as well. And we'll get into that in a second. But so I guess Warren is the better prospect right now. However, as I said, Loveland's got more potential. So some reasons why ultimately I think this is a good decision by the Bears, by Poles and Ben Johnson. So Loveland set the Michigan single season records with 56 receptions while also covering 582 yards and scoring 5 touchdowns during his 21st season. And that was with missing 2 games. He had 11 career touchdown catches, and that's tied for the second most in Michigan football history. And he's third all time with 170 catches and 1,466 receiving yards. And by the way, the Browns pick is in as soon as they announce this, right? I'll throw that out there as well. Maybe you're listening to this and don't have the game on or the draft on. And we'll talk about the picks kind of as they come, at least the important ones that might affect the Bears in particular. Pretty cool. Joe Thomas is announcing this pick. It's crazy how much smaller he is. You're just a massive individual playing. Oh, here we go. Carson Schwessinger, linebacker for the Browns. I actually love Carson Schwessinger, and I know Kyrie kind of half jokingly, half seriously did pick Carson in one of his mocks, but that's just because he's a very good player. Probably depending on how you put some of these guys, in terms of where you're putting their positions, but arguably he's probably the best linebacker. Dane Brugler had him as his linebacker too. At the end of the day, Schwessinger, just an absolute rocket on the field, but he also has great play recognition and can diagnose incredibly well. He's a finishing kind of a tackler. So even when the technique isn't perfect, he has the strength and he has kind of that grit and determination to bring guys down. I think I really like this pick for the Browns. I think that'll be really fun for them, bolster that defense. I mean, Browns are just doing some interesting stuff right now, to be completely honest. But anyway, now you have the Texans are going to be up, and we're going to keep going back to Colson Loveland conversation. But back to Loveland, he ranks third in route yards per route run and first downs per route in 2024. And he did this with an awful quarterback, right? McCarthy obviously went to the NFL, to the Vikings, and was replaced by not a very good quarterback. Ranked 7th and 6th in those categories, yards per route run and first downs. Ooh, okay, Texans pick is in. Throw that out there real quick. Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State. I like Higgins. He's good. Honestly, I prefer Knoll. That'd be my go-to. I think Higgins is cast as this big go up and get it receiver just because of his body type. But sometimes he doesn't really play that way, and that bothers me a little bit. He lets the ball get in on him a bit too much. Doesn't really, go attack the ball. But you compare that to Knoll. I mean, Knoll's a guy who you can play him inside and outside. He's much more aggressive at the point of attack. I think he's a more savvy route runner. So yeah, I personally like Knoll better. But for the Texans in particular, I can see why they might go this route, just in terms of the size that Higgins does give them. I mean, he's 6'4", right, compared to 5'10" for a Knoll. But yeah, I have Knoll as a better player personally. All right, moving on back to our Loveland talk. I know this is kind of all over the place, but that's just what's going to happen when you're doing a live podcast and you're just chatting. So, as I mentioned, Loveland ranks 7th and 6th in categories of yards per route run and also in first downs for his career amongst the 204 tight ends that qualified since 2020. And then he also had 75% of his catches were for first down, which is pretty impressive. If you compare that previous stat I had, the yards per route and first downs, to Warren was 15th and 13th in those categories. And again, Warren's supposed to have the more mature game, and he's supposed to be the more ready prospect. So you can see why that ceiling is what it is. Eric Gelko, director of football ops and player personnel of the Shrine Bowl, said that Colson Loveland was their number 2 player in the entire draft, excluding all QBs after Travis Hunter. He's just a notch below Brock Bowers as a prospect and finishes the second highest graded tight end that he's ever graded and grade value at 10. Nick Saban called him the best receiver of all the tight ends in this draft. And something to note. So I know some individuals were saying, well, why don't you trade back, right? If you look, Loveland was a guy who on most, pause. The Seahawks have traded up to the 35th pick. Also, y'all throw some comments in there. Let's have a discussion. If you have questions or anything like that, throw them in there, react to what's going on here live. But yeah, Seahawks have traded up to the 35th pick. Interesting. I wonder who this is going to be for. But back to Loveland. Every year, and Ian Rappaport said this, every year there's a player who gets really hot late, one that teams are scrambling to trade up for. Last night, that player was Colson Loveland. When the Bears picked him at 10, the calls in the early teens quieted. There wasn't a trade until 25. So that is very important to highlight. So if the Bears determined that Loveland was their guy, right, over Warren in particular, we can talk about their positions in a second here, but if Loveland was their guy, they could not move off that spot because other teams were trying to move up to get him. And that's because of his potential. Now, if you want to talk about other positions, right? Why didn't they go offensive line? The three main tackles, I think 2 tackles and guard, if we're calling Cullen Banks a guard, which I do, they went already, right? That was it. They were done. If you wanted to, you could quote unquote reach, depending on how you look at it, at a Josh Simmons. I've been very vocal about what I think about Simmons, specifically with his injury, but also he's got some off the field kind of stuff that I don't love. Josh Connerly, we can have a conversation there, but he's probably your 4th best ranked offensive tackle, depending on how you look at it. But I mean, he didn't get taken until pick 29 by the Commanders. So that's a tough one. You can talk defensive line. All these edges have their warts. You got Michael Williams. He's probably who I would have alternatively, if you weren't going to go with Loveland Warren at that pick, who I would have wanted, and he would have 1 pick later to the 49ers. He fits the mold you want in terms of arm length and in terms of play style, but he's definitely more run defender first right now. And then he's still trying to figure it out as a pass rusher. And on top of that, he had his own injury stuff. And you can just go through that. I mean, Kenneth Grant would have been, I'm not as big high on Grant as some of the other inside guys, but more so maybe even a Derek Harmon for me, or Walter Nolan. Why didn't you go there? And I think ultimately that's because currently, in terms of what the Bears have, they had an actual hole at that tight end too, and at least 30, if not a little bit more percent of what their snaps are going to be in 12 personnel. So that's super important to note here. Oh, okay, here we go. By the way, Seahawks officially, they have drafted Nick Emmanwori, safety out of South Carolina. Very interesting because actually just before the draft went live, there was some whispers that maybe the Bears might sniff around Emmanwori. It makes sense to an extent. Oh, and by the way, Seattle got the 35th pick and they traded away the 52nd pick and a 3rd round pick in this draft to go get him. So they were motivated to get Emmanwori, giving away that 3rd rounder. In a bubble, would it make sense to get Emmanwori? Yes. We're not really sure what the future for Brisker is. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because he just really hasn't so far. And then you have, Kevin Byard is not young. It's probably the nicest way to put it. The caveat though is, while if you rolled out tomorrow, you could play a game with the guys that you have, right? I mean, you could field a football team and feel decent about it with the Bears. There are still enough holes that you want to address those with some picks we have left, right? So with these 2 seconds and even potentially that 3rd, do you want offensive line, interior, and then even potentially at tackle, if you want to talk about an earth rate. Running back is another conversation that the Bears ultimately need to address, in my opinion. So with all that being said, safety, a bit of a luxury. And then when you talk about Emma specifically, I mean, yes, it's super tantalizing because I mean he just jumps off the page athletically. Impressive size and speed. I mean, he's like a freak in terms of that combination. Explosive range, productive as a robber, and he can undercut routes really well. His movement skills match up with backs and tight ends in coverage. I mean, he didn't allow a touchdown in 2024. He just looks very natural playing the game and has a very physical mentality. So you could see why that would be a in theory, perfect Brisker replacement, you could say. But I mean, he's super inconsistent in terms of his reads, overall overly aggressive angles, and he misses a lot of tackles. Pretty tight in the body. It's a very linear athlete. Go from A to B. If you see that there's a shift, he just doesn't cut super well, and there's some unnecessary penalties that they were taking as well, so, that he took as well. So for me, I mean, if you were going to go safety, I actually would prefer like a Xavier Watts. Maybe if you could trade down, collect an extra third, kind of a thing, draft him either using that or something of that nature. All right, another pick is in, and if you don't want spoilers, I'm watching on NFL Network, but also I'm keeping up on the Twitterverse. Sorry, I'm just gonna basically put these out there as I as I see them, but and we'll go from there. This one hurts. This one hurts. Quinshon Judkins was drafted by the Browns. I've been very vocal about my love for Judkins, and I just think he fits. I know Danny was on a couple times saying that in terms of his running style. But I think, and I just love his running style, really. That to me was very important. But and then obviously the Browns loved it too. So you still have a lot of good running backs left. To me, I'm not a big Travion Henderson guy personally. I think that I don't think he's bad. That's not it. He's a great run blocker. He's extremely explosive. And between the two, between Judkins and Henderson, he is the more explosive one. I mean, if you want a 60-yard run, you're going to lean on Henderson. But if you want to give me 5 yards, you're going to go with Judkins. So the Browns saw that they need a running back. Their room's terrible. I mean, they have Jerome Ford basically, and other bodies. So I mean, this makes a lot of sense for them. And I think with that team and currently with the lack of quarterback they have, he's going to be a really fun fantasy option. But some people are going to be celebrating this because they would rather have a Henderson. All right, cool. So now we're basically caught up with all the picks, at least that I'm seeing. So really quick, I know some people are asking about this. I should dive into this before, and then we can leave the Loveland conversation behind. But going back to Loveland really quick, because the Bears pick is coming up soon. Shoulder surgery. He underwent the operation on January 29th to repair and reconstruct the AC joint in the right shoulder after he had an injury back in September. So he had high-grade dislocation. So you grade those on the Rockwood scale, 1 to 6. So if you have a 3 to a 6, those usually require surgery. My guess is he was probably in the 3 to 4 range just because of the fact that he was able to play with it as long as he did and pushed it off. There are different techniques to repair that. So you can do the Kirshner wire fixation. It has the highest return to play rate at 98.5%, while the isolated graft reconstruction had the earliest return to play at 3.6 months, but just not quite as solid. An AC joint repair surgery, after AC joint repair surgery, football players typically return to play within a time frame of 4 months, and for a professional and 5 months for non-professional athletes. Loveland said today that he was given the time frame of 6 months, and he's at the 3-month mark now, and that totally makes sense. When you're transitioning from college to the pros, the urgency isn't there. You might as well wait, make sure it's fully healed. He probably could get back a bit sooner, so right than the 6, but you just want to make sure that you maximize his return, right? So amongst collision athletes, the rate of return to play is 97.3%. and 97.2% return to the same level of play. Super important, right? So basically, long story short, I'm not overly concerned about the shoulder. I think he's going to be fine. He full range of motion at this point, just needs to continue getting the strength back. Strength takes time, hence why you have that 6-month timeline. He had no post-operative complications or delays. He's going to be able to partake in non-contact workouts pretty much immediately. So, running routes, catching balls, all that stuff. But he should be able to do full team drills by the time that training camp starts. So that's it. All right. That's the Loveland conversation. All right, to the draft tonight. So I was going to talk about Quinshon Judkins as one of my hopes, but unfortunately, that's already done. That's a bummer. I know some people position wise, edge. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Lineman. That's probably the next one. And then running back. Those are probably, I would say, the top 3. And then you can throw a D tackle in probably 4th, more so because the depth of this class at D tackle is so good. You want to make sure you get in on that, but it's not like hey, like we need to go get a defensive tackle, because you got Billings, you got Dexter, you have Grady Jarrett, geez, and you have some okay depth behind them. However, right, Billings is coming off an injury. We have no idea what that's going to look like. So what if he's a shadow of his former self? You're going to have Grady Jarrett. Oh, another trade. Dolphins have traded up to pick 37. A lot of trades. Teams are seeing their guys and going to get them. Hopefully, this does not bite the Bears in the butt, because they're up in a couple picks, obviously. We'll see what they're coming for here. Miami, they went ahead and they got Kenneth Grant because they're just so weak on that. I would say the defense as a whole, but especially their front. Their interior, and that's why they drafted Grant, is because they need to bolster it. I don't think Grant's as good of a run defender as some do, but at least he's still a big body. So I'm wondering if, maybe are they coming up for an edge at this point? Something of that nature. Or they going to try to get a receiver? Because I know there's been a lot of conversation about Tyreek Hill, and do they move on there? So basically, here we go. So Dolphins have traded up with the Raiders, and Miami is taking tackle guard Jonah Savanea. Hope I didn't butcher that. Still okay for the Bears. Still okay, because I see him, Jonah, as a guard. And so similar to the defensive tackle conversation, you are currently okay. You're fine at guard for now, right? How much gas in the tank does Tooney have? Will Jackson be able to play an entire season? He had the injury that held him out a lot last year. And then what is your depth right now, right? Your depth's not fantastic. We saw that last year, what happened when you had guys like Tevin Jenkins, go down and things of that nature. So getting a young guard would still be a good thing. However, there is a more obvious, maybe a little bit more prudent need, I think, at tackle. So Ariante Ursary, to me, the 5th ranked offensive tackle on Dane Brugler's board, would be where I would go if I was going to attack the line here. Edge, really interesting conversation, because there's a couple guys that were expected to be first-round picks who have fallen for a variety of reasons. Mike Green's the obvious one, where because of his domestic violence issues, and then I believe also gun charge, he's just fallen down boards. He also doesn't really fit the physical profile that you normally have at edge in a Dennis Allen defense. Now maybe is Dennis Allen a little more flexible, where it's like he's just a really good player, I'll figure it out, or is he going to be pretty staunchly against that? Another player, Donovan Ezraku, I'm hoping I'm not butchering that, is another really good pass rusher. I swore he was going to draft in the first round. I thought he was like a Green Bay Packer. The problem here, not overall, I'm not sure honestly why he's dropping, but at least specifically for the Bears, is the size, right? He's 6'3", 248 pounds, and he's got an arm length of 34 inches. So he's got long arms, but that frame is a bit smaller. But still, to me, it's I think because of that arm length, he makes up for that size. I really do think that he'd be a really good choice here. He's really bendy, accelerates really well, has a nice jab steps, cross chop to get open into the rushing lane. He was a 2-year captain as well. And also one of the biggest things for me, as I'm sure all of you who are listening know, really durable. Started 36 straight games before opting out of the 2024 bowl game, and he led the FBS in sacks per game with 1.38. So I'm trying to figure out exactly why he's falling. It's probably the height would be it, and that smaller frame, just not quite as explosive as a guy like a. I'm blinking on his name. Jeez. Oh, Jalen Walker. There we go. As a Jalen Walker. So that because Jalen Walker obviously is kind of that weird tweener linebacker edge. So that's probably, if I had to guess, like one of the reasons why he's fallen a little bit. And at the end of the day, he's got pretty average speed, so he's not that freaky athlete that you might want there, but just very productive player and someone that I would look at here. Continuing down some of the guys who are available. I know a lot of people are talking, and you could, if you're watching this live, you can see me rubbing my head on this conversation because it's a tough one. A lot of people are circling in Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan. From what I understand, that knee's pretty messed up. I mean, if you went into the beginning of this year, start before any games were played, I mean, he was a top 5, at least top 10 guy. And then with the play he had, which already wasn't great, there was a bit of an issue there. And then on top of that, you throw in that injury, and I think that knee is like pretty funky. And it was not just the knee either. So he's had several injuries. I mean, he had some scopes in the 2022 season, which sidelined for 2 games to start 2023. He sat out 2023 Big Ten Championship with a minor injury. He's missed 7 games as a junior, 1 to a shoulder injury, and the final 6 to a toe injury. That's just a lot. And he's also pretty limited in terms of what he's ultimately going to do. Like his speed, he didn't run, and obviously you're going to talk about that being a injury thing, but he's got pretty average speed. And you can see that on tape. He's not a fast guy. I mean, you need to put him in a defense where and actually I thought he'd be great with the Bills because of this, but you put him in a defense where he can sit back and zone. He can use his intelligence and he can use his length in order to, and physicality, right, to win. Because he's a fluid, long athlete. He's got really good footwork, good anticipation. He actually used to play receiver, and so that shows when he has a chance at the ball. Like he's not one of those I'm just going to drop, interception or opportunity kind of guys. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's a bit, that injury scares me. And it's not just that injury; it's just one after another. It keeps racking up. So that is a problem for me. All right, Patriots are wrapping up their pick. Pick is in. We'll see ultimately who they picked here. Well, actually, yep, the Bears are on the clock. That we are flying through this. It is crazy how in these drafts, like how far behind the broadcast ultimately gets on this. Isn't like I don't understand like how that happens. Travion Henderson is going to the Patriots. So if you were someone in the Travion Henderson hopeful group, he gone. So what do you do here? Some of the running backs available. Caleb Johnson, if Danny was here, he would have said this. It should have been him all along. is probably the next running back up. Really good for his own defense. Some of the top end speed issues is the biggest thing for me, right? He's not very explosive, and the advanced metrics don't really love him in this situation. And one could say pick 39 right now with Bears are on the clock it could be a bit rich. But at this rate, right, I mean, you've already seen 2 running backs go. Quinshon Judkins, a lot of people thought would actually go later, that you could trade back to get him. So at this point, because there's a run on running back, do you feel the need to just go get yours? You know what, we're going to do this and we're going to move on? Or because it is a deep running back class, are you fine waiting? Are you fine going to the Bashal Tutin route, the Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee, going that route? Because ultimately, I think those are some good players as well. but you got to be pretty confident that you're going to be able to get them, because once you get it past 39-41, the Bears got some time, right, before they pick. So just some other positions that we could like talk about here. I do wonder. So defensive tackle. Let's see who do we got defensive tackle wise, because even though I don't think it's as pressing as edge, I do think they need. So Tyleik Williams was interesting because I did not think he'd go day one. I think he's really good, and I thought he'd be potentially an option for the Bears, but he went early, and he went to, unfortunately, the Lions, which probably means he's going to be a fantastic selection. Shamar Turner, really interesting guy. I think he's a second-round pick, as well as Alfred Collins. He's second/third. Those would be my two I would circle as my I would hope I'd want for the Bears if possible at this point for defensive tackle. Collins, you might be able to wait till the third. I know I'm saying that with not a lot of confidence. I'm not 100% on that one just because of how this draft is currently going. But even on edge too, guys like Landon Jackson, JT Tuimoloau, Jordan Birch, all those guys I would still like, and I think are very viable options here. All right. Man, if John Falsetta says the Minnesota left tackle. Yeah, I mean, right now for me, there's two things I'm doing. I'm either getting my running back, like we just kind of talked about, or I'm taking Ursery, and that's the Minnesota left tackle. Is he gonna? I mean, fifth-year senior, so there's a reason why he didn't come out earlier. But I mean, he's a big dude, 6'6", 331 pounds. That size and broad shoulders, it's hard to get through. Fairly athletic and patient feet, quick out of his stance, displays pretty good stunts and blitz coverage, and his coaches praise the jumps he made over his college career. He's a pretty good team leader. Started 38 straight games at left tackle, so solid. He pretty solid in terms of that durability. The problem and why he's potentially here available in the second round, his anchor can be diminished when he's late with his strikes. Plays pretty upright, and his hands are often wide and accurate and will miss. False steps at times, occasionally allows feet to get choppy. Didn't miss any starts because of injury past 3 seasons, but he did sit out most of the regular season finale with the right ankle sprain. And then almost all of his career stats can be at left tackle, so he doesn't have any flexibility really for you. I mean, if he's left tackle, he's left tackle, he's left tackle. So, if that's what you want, that's totally fine. But you're missing that. So, yeah, again, plays high, too upright, misses with the strikes. If you have a good offensive line coach, is that something that might improve? Sure. But again, like I said, he is a 5th-year senior. So you feel kind of that he is what he is. Not even necessarily in a bad way, just in that's what it is. But, oh, sorry. I thought I saw what the pick was going to be for the Bears here. Nope, not yet. So it's also kind of crazy, by the way, that pick 39 is the last of the picks that the Panthers traded to the Bears 2 years ago when they moved up to get Bryce Young. And it just felt like one of those things that was going to go on forever. It's like, the gift that keeps on giving. But it's great. So once this pick happens, we will officially be able to close the chapter on that trade and go from there. Well, the pick is officially in, and we sit and wait with bated breath to see who the Bears have picked here at 39. Man, I mean, I think if I had to put my flag in the sand, I'd probably just go with Ursery here, because worst case scenario, if a team you can't get jumped here, because after that, now you're talking about guys I think are fine, but like you're talking about Ozzie Trapillo, who he's more of a 3rd-round guy. You're talking about Charles Grant, who I think has a really good chance to be a really good left tackle, but he's a William & Mary guy, and you kind of did this a little bit. I mean, he's not hurt like Karan Amagaji was, but do you really want your left tackle itinerary, to be Braxton and then Karan and then Charles Grant? You probably can't do that. So I would probably go with Ursery here. And mind blown. Okay, the Bears take Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden the third. Okay, let's talk about this. I like Luther Burden. Don't get me wrong. I really do. So, out of Missouri, third ranked wide receiver by Dane Brugler. And if you can't tell, I use Dane Brugler as my go-to just because I think the job he does is fantastic. The reason, okay, let's go with the positives first. 6 foot, 206 pounds, third-year junior, right? So he's a young dude. He's only 21. Predominantly a slot receiver in a heavy motion offense. He had 100-yard receiving performance in 2024. Above average foot speed for a 206 pounder. He ran a 4.41 40. Dangerous with the ball in his hands, lined up in the backfield, threatened defenses with jet sweep options. Outstanding lower body agility to redirect and burst in other directions. Ability to stop on a dime and leave defenders just falling. I mean, so he tracks the ball well, strong concentration. He had a catch in 34 straight games. He averaged 10.5 yards per punt return. So that's another layer of this too. He can do punt return specifically for you. And he finished fourth in Missouri history with career catches, 192. Now, on the negative side, he's a gadget guy, and I think that's why he fell to where he did. I say gadget guy like it's a bad thing. You need to have a plan for him. You need to have planned touches. So to me, this is the Jameson Williams role, right? We need someone who's fast, who can spread, who can move laterally. I mean, he's not as much of a down the field guy like a Jameson Williams would be, but you kind of already have that for, I guess, in Loveland now, can stretch the field a bit. Rome can stretch the field a bit, but he does have vertical speed. He does have really good body control. He is very sudden in those routes. And I kind of got away with this, but no, I can't even think of anything else like too negative. Here, the last thing I'll say is he just kind of gets in your way as a blocker. Blocking is not his forte. Now, Ben Johnson has his no block, no rock mentality. So we'll see if he changes that. But I would say he's kind of like a Jaden Reed kind of a player. So, and I like Jaden Reed like a lot. And I'm still kind of just flummoxed. I'm flabbergasted. I just did not think that this is where this was going to go, like at all. Just with needs like we talked about, running back, edge, with the edges that were available, defensive tackle, left tackle, but potentially just with how this draft was going with some of these wide receivers coming off the board, earlier in the first round and all that, getting this pick done at 39 might have just been what the Bears felt they needed to do. All right. Well, now we will play the waiting game again, which is not very long. It's pretty fun when you actually when you have 2 picks within 3. So just gotta wait for the Saints to get their pick in. Continuing a little bit, why not? Let's talk about Luther Burden at this point. So NFL.com had Luther Burden compared to, and take these all with a grain of salt. We're just talking about maybe some play style stuff. But Garrett Wilson in his scouting report, you could also say he's got some DJ Moore to his game, to be honest, in terms of that runaway speed. And I think for the most part, this is going to be something that really does help. I mean, Caleb is going to have very little to no excuse at this point. Because of all the weapons that he has, right? He's going to have, and all kinds of weapons. You have kind of runaway guys in DJ Moore. You have the bigger body route runner down the field in Rome. He can also play the power slot. I know some people hate that term, but power slot. You have two different kinds of tight ends. A big body guy who can block out and is great in the red zone in Cole Kmet. You got your faster, more explosive seam stretcher, matchup nightmare in Loveland. Now you have Luther Burden, who's going to help you on special teams, but also, I mean, the dude, he gets open and he's going to be able to, like I said, take the top off with that vertical speed. So at this point, in terms of weaponry, there's no excuse. And I think this also tells you that the Bears must be at least relatively confident in terms of where Braxton is and where he's going to be. Because if you weren't, you're not rolling into the next year with just Braxton and Karan if you're not confident with Braxton. So here's something from Jordan Schultz. I just think this is interesting. If this is pure draft day fodder. Luther Burden III was working out at 1 a.m. last night in the Mizzou facility despite not being drafted. Like, just isn't that just like perfect? The pick is in for the Saints, and the Saints, Tyler Shaw. Oh man, this is funny. So right, Tyler Shaw is now the third quarterback drafted, and we still see, man, and we just keep seeing Shedeur Sanders fall. The problem for Shedeur is a couple things, right? Unfortunately, his game is okay. You know, he's mostly accurate. I think that was something that was like overblown, to be honest, in terms of his accuracy. Pretty polished mechanics. He can make all the throws. I mean, he's not a stellar arm, but it's a good arm. He can stand in pressure. Like, no one's questioning his toughness, and he will run. He just isn't all that athletic. He's not that fast. But you compare that to even a Jackson Dart. There you go. Dart's, I think, a bit more athletic than him, to be completely honest. And then on the negative side, I mean, he's not a quick twitch passer. The ball doesn't explode off his hand. Like, he's mediocre in size. He backpedals oddly. It's very Jordan Love-esque. And I don't mean that as a compliment. He just drifts. Jordan Love drifts back in order to just create a little space and to create some time, versus I feel like Shedeur, like, almost, it's like he watched Jordan Love and he just does it because he thinks it looks cool. It's very weird. You can see him buy time in the pocket, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it as well in the NFL just because of the change in speed. And that's just not. And then you look at the offense. I mean, everything was screens and these short throws, and it's just, you didn't see enough of the middle of the field and then downfield stuff to feel confident. And then lastly, it's the off the field stuff. You know, it's like, is his star too bright because of his name? Is his, and then like throwing. Okay, boom. All right. Sorry, hold on. Bears have traded pick 41 to the Bills. This is it. This is what we're looking for. Now he's got to wait and see what they get. At this point, there's so much talent right now that's falling. And a little bit of it is the running backs. A little bit of it is, let's see here. Boop, boop. And a little bit of it is individuals that were trading up, trying to get their specific guy. But at this point, you know, the guys like we talked about at the beginning of this little live part, like Mike Green, the fact that he's still available, the fact that Will Johnson's still available, that that Donovan Zaraku is still available, Ursary. I mean, there's so many. I can keep going through these names, but they're all here. So why not move back, right? Why not move back and get some more draft picks? So here's the trade. Chicago gave away pick 41. Pick 72 and pick 240. The Bills gave up pick 56, pick 62, and pick 109. So basically, the Bears moved back to pick 56. They upgraded their 72nd pick to 62, so by 10. And then they upgraded 240 all the way up to 109. This is, I cannot say more about how awesome this is. Wow. So basically, they picked up a fourth and upgraded a third. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And the other thing too that's great about this is even with that trade, they're still in like the realm of a bunch of guys that make sense, right? That's your Caleb Johnson range. I mean, if you want to go into some other running backs, I know I'm big on the running back. I know the Bears need one. That's Dylan. That's Dylan Sampson, right? That's Jordan James. So can we talk about Jordan James? I don't think enough people are because Jordan James is he's not going to do anything fancy, but Jordan James is I will just get you the every yard that I can, right? And so he's short and stocky, cut physique, decisive zone runner, big, right? Because in terms of how much zone they're going to run, runs with attitude and consistently picks up more yards than he should, right? It's one of those. So it's the exact opposite of DeAndre Swift. And if y'all who watch Bare Bones absolutely know this, my issue with one of the biggest issues with him was if you looked at his expected yards per carry, he was the worst in the league, like bottom of the league in expected yards per carry. Jordan James will be the opposite of that. He's supposed to get 2, he'll get you 4. He's supposed to get you 10, he'll get you 12. Right? It's just he takes what he can, and then he gets just a little bit more every single time. So I think Jordan James would also be a fantastic pick that not enough people are talking about. So now the Bears have. So here's my dilemma though, because I was only planning on doing the second round here, and relatively getting off quickly. But I guess we're all stuck together a little bit because with that trade, one, obviously I'm going to be here a little longer, but two, now they have pick 62. So we're in it. We're in it, y'all. Yeah, that's crazy. Sorry, now I'm just pulling. I'm trying to look just to see exactly where all these picks are lying here. 56 and 62. All right, so I'll be here with you for like 10 hours. That's fun. Fun for everyone though. This is great. All right. So who did the Bills take? Ooh, defensive tackle TJ Sanders. South Carolina. Again, like the guy, pretty versatile dude and quick off the ball. He's got some pad level issues though. I mean, I think they need this. They need heft in their interior. So this makes a lot of sense. It's funny because I think you're seeing now some reaction to like the Luther Burden pick. Just talking about how like the pick itself, the player itself. Oh, someone just tweeted out. I know how accurate this is. Someone can do the math if they really want to. That with that deal, Chicago lost by about 3%. They weren't getting the full, extra on top of that. So if anyone wants to verify that, absolutely go ahead and do so. But so it's just something that popped up on the feed here. Something of note. So even if they did lose that by 3%, let's say that for the sake of argument, because I'm not doing all the math right now. I think in this draft in particular, where you do have such a significant talent that exists in the second and third round, at least like that I feel. Um, Even if you lost 3%, the fact that you upgraded 2 picks is huge. Because also at the end of the day, like, yeah, you could throw a bunch of 6 and 7s on a trade, and all of a sudden, like, someone's winning, someone's losing. Or someone's, all of a sudden, oh, look at this, all this value I got. It's like, well, no, it's because what are you going to do with these 7th round picks? They're guys that are going to get cut and probably even not make a practice squad. So who really cares? All right, so now we are on pick 42 with a ways to go until the Bears pick at 56. All right. The Jets pick is in. Jets are another just interesting conundrum of a team. I actually really like what they did yesterday, right? They got their other left tackle, they got Membu. I'm not sure you could have a more interesting tackle combo going forward. You have Olufushanu playing on the left side, and you have now Membu on the right. I mean, that is the fact that you could have 2 tackles that are on rookie deals, 2 tackles that were selected not just in the first round, but were some of the better tackles in their class, arguably. The biggest problem that tackle duo might be the most intriguing one going forward. Not necessarily the best right now. Obviously, we have to see what Membu actually does in the NFL, and we have to see Olu more than just what he did for the year, which was solid, but nothing extraordinary. But just the fact, but yeah. Oh, okay, here we go. Pick is in for the Jets. Mason Taylor. What a fantastic pick, mainly because of the name. But overall, what a fantastic pick because I like Mason Taylor. I know one of my co-hosts, Danny Meehan, is not the biggest Mason Taylor fan. Doesn't love it like his play style, but he's probably the second best. I could probably say confidently. No, I'll say third. Third best receiving tight end in this class. Loveland, I think, is number one. But he's a guy that's going to give Justin at this point if Justin can get the ball. I like the player. I don't love the fit because as it thinks it right now, I love Justin. I want all the success in the world for him. He's not fantastic at throwing the ball in the middle. And then you just took a guy in Mason Taylor who most of his routes are going to be very heavy in the middle. He doesn't offer you much of anything when it comes to blocking. It's very secondary for him. He doesn't offer you really anything else though. So if you're not going to use him, so I'm at this point in time, I think that pick probably could have been used better, even if I like the player. So, we'll just roll with that. Oh yeah, and I didn't even realize this. So that pick that they got, the 4th round pick that they got from the Bills, that was their 4th that they got back. They got pick 109. So it's like the Austin Booker trade was for free. Okay, great. I mean, it wasn't actually, obviously, but fun. There's also, oh, by the way, some whispers that potentially the Bears actually wanted to trade off both picks, 39 and 41, but that they didn't really get a big enough offer to move off of 39. So then they went ahead with Burton. And I think you can probably see that with the return they got in 41, if in fact it is about a 3-ish% loss on that trade that they got for 41. All right, up now with the 49ers. Oh, the Cowboys are on the clock and Shador isn't there. Wouldn't that be funny? What if Shador ended up on the Cowboys? That would be such a Jerry move. So okay, Galaxy Brain. They draft Shador Sanders. Schottenheimer, that is not a secure job for that man. I don't think we can sit here and pretend like it is. And then fast forward and you bring Dion in as the head coach. There's a whole blah, 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 blah. They end up trading away Dak Prescott to whoever the highest bidder is. And then he forces Shador to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. That is a universe that I absolutely could live in. I am also upset. Alfred Collins was just selected by the 49ers. Great pick for them. Alfred Collins is one of my favorite untapped potential or kind of guys just because of how young he is. But he only had 1 year starting. He played behind Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, so he didn't really get to show out too much. And also, but really a broad, big frame dude. Love his height and weight length combinations. I mean, he's got a 34 and 5/8 wingspan, 35-inch at pro days. The whole wingspan or arm length thing was crazy between combine and pro days and all that jazz. So take that with a grain of salt. But 6'6", 332 pounds, elite tackle to miss tackle ratio, 55-2. 55-2. That's insane. So he can get blockers moving one way before cutting back into the pocket. He really matured in his play recognition, I thought. If you look at 2023 tape to 2024 tape. And he actually blocked the field goals this year. So that's fun. So yeah, I really like Alfred Collins. Wish he could have been a Bear in some way, shape, or form, but that's not gonna happen. Oh, fun fact. Loveland, right? We talked about this a little earlier, just turned 21. And Burden is the second youngest wide receiver in this class. That's a big youth movement for the weapons. For those who have joined, a couple more, some stats for you. Luther Burden, right, was drafted by the Bears at pick 39. He led Missouri with 61 receptions, 6 receiving touchdowns in 2024. 2-time first-team All-SEC, led the team with 86 receptions, 9 receiving touchdowns in 2023. 1,212 receiving yards in 2023, 9th in the FBS. So yeah, not necessarily a need for the Bears. Pretty, I would say, gluttonous, if anything, but something that ultimately you're not. Actually, okay, quick pin in that. Come back to it. So the Cowboys have selected Boston College defensive end Donovan Ezraku at number 44. Really solid pick. They needed edge help. I mean, they lost DeMarcus Lawrence. I mean, played obviously defensive tackle, but they needed more oomph along the line. Who did they draft last year? Because they drafted an edge last year. Marshawn Nealon, that's who it was. Problem is, Nealon didn't do really much of anything, and I believe he also got hurt. So, I mean, it's a great value pick for the Cowboys. Pretty jealous that they were able to pull that off because I really like him as a player. So to go back to the thought I was having before about the offense and the weapons, one of the problems last year was that there were too many weapons, at least in my opinion. Maybe not even too much would be the right way to say it, but for one, the offense was just trash in terms of how it's designed. That's a offensive coordinator issue. But also, we saw literally from the jump in that first game how much they were trying to shove the ball at Keenan Allen. And we continue to see that throughout the year. If anything, there were just almost too many, in my opinion, too many alphas, too many individuals who needed the ball. And I think especially with Keenan being a vet and whether it was directly said, hey, get Keenan the ball, whether Keenan said it himself or Caleb just thought he had to, whatever combination that is, there are too many targets going there, not enough to roam, nowhere near enough to Cole Kmet, et cetera, et cetera. So my question is, just to play devil's advocate and to, talk about the negative and the good. Is that still the case? Do we basically just elevate? DJ Moore still DJ. Rome, now gets more targets. You got Loveland, you got Burden, and we're not even talking about handing the ball off to a running back yet. Is that too many cooks in the kitchen? Is that too many mouths to feed? However you want to put it. Would you have been better served using that Burden pick on Ezraku, using it on? We talked about we went over a bunch of these names already. Don't need to continuously do so. If you want to, I think Nicholas Moriano at Nicholas Moriano also is going to be live tweeting Director of College Scouting Breck Ackley talking about Luther Burden III. So I'll try to, if I see anything pop up, I'll highlight that as we're going. I already mentioned this, but it's absolutely crazy that the fact that Adam Schefter just tweeted out 8 seconds ago or so about Donovan being drafted by the Cowboys, the fact that it's just happening, at least where I'm watching on NFL Network. But I mean, we knew that about 5 minutes ago. It's pretty crazy. While we're on the Keenan Allen topic, might as well. He still hasn't been signed yet. And actually, if you go to his Instagram, someone might want to do a wellness check on the guy, because it just seems like he's not taking the fact he doesn't have a job super well. But man, I just think that it shows what the league thinks of Keenan, right? And we can go back to when the Bears traded for him. It was known that the Houston Texans were trying to get his service as well, and then they ultimately pivoted to Stephon Diggs. Some of it could just be reacting to how bad it was last year, not necessarily Keenan's fault, but more so just the output of it. But the league, usually we know pretty quickly what's going on. All right, this is a bummer because also like him, Colts have selected Ohio State defensive end JT Tuimalu at number 45. He had a big 2024, 21.5 total tackles for loss, 12.5 sacks. So the edges are starting to come off the board. So if you're hoping to get an edge with one of those Bears picks, either 56 or the one later at the end of their second round here, starting to dry up a little bit. Here's a little bit with Luther Burden. So Bears Director of College Scouting, Breck Ackley, said the team doesn't view wide receiver Luther Burden as just a slot receiver. He said that Ben Johnson wants threats and options that make his offense unpredictable. So considering he's a guy who played so much slot when he was at Missouri. I'm seeing if I can find the actual percentage here. Nothing popping up right now, but he played a lot of slot. But that the Bears don't see him as that they could play him outside, which interesting. Considering again he's 6'2", 206, 31 and a quarter inch arms, that they see him in that way. He had just 10 catches of 20 more yards in 2024, which is 110th in the FBS. So while he wasn't getting a lot of explosive down the field catches, which is interesting. And yeah, I thought there was something else, but there isn't. Anyway. So yeah, I'll keep throwing little bits of news as it comes out here. But as of right now, that's all we got. I wonder when the Mike Green slide stops. Like, what what team is gonna ultimately take a chance on him with the off the field stuff. I know it's not great, but man. Another interesting layer, actually, now I think about it, about the whole this Colts selection. Um, they just took Latu last year at edge. Didn't do great. He had a great game against the Bears. Didn't do great overall, I think, on the season, at least in my opinion. I never really poo-pooed him in terms of his skill set. It was always the neck and stuff that freaked me out, and just didn't like it. But the fact they feel the need to go to edge again as early as the second round, and you can't really have too many edges. Brian Pohl said this, so I got to be fair, and if I think it's a valid point by him, it has to apply to other teams. But I mean, that's a lot of capital that you're using at edge, considering it just went last year. So, just interesting little tidbit here. Just also, we talked about the Panthers trade. Let's wrap that up. So this was the final haul for the Bears from the Bryce Young trade. DJ Moore, Darnell Wright, Tyreek Stevenson, Caleb Williams, Torrey Taylor, acquired from moving from 9 to 10 in 2023, and then Luther Burden. That, see what you will about Tyreek Stevenson. I still think he's a good corner. Sometimes he gets outside of himself a little bit in playing, but for the most part, a lot of people would be very happy having him. A lot of teams, I should say, would be very happy having him as a wide receiver too. Sorry, cornerback too. But obviously, it's the brain stuff, right? It's the mental errors that popped up last year, and even the year before, with some of those penalties. Now, I think that Dennis Allen and that defensive staff are built in a way that they can get the best out of him and get his head right. So, I still consider Tyreek Stevenson more. If there's a spectrum, right, 0 being bust, 10 being like all pro, I still consider him like us on the positive side, more on the 6. But he still has a long way to go, and can easily just slam right back down. But I know that's not for everybody. All right, we are chilling at pick 46 with the LA Rams. Waiting for that pick to come across the ticker here. Pick is in for the Rams. We're just waiting at this point to see who they ultimately selected. It is also very cool what the Rams are doing, right? The fact that their draft room is taking over the fire station in LA, just kind of an homage for those who fought those fires that were so detrimental to the area. So good on them. It's very cool. It just shows how much they care about their area. All right. Don't know where the the Rams pick is, but I can tell you the Cardinals, who are after the Rams, are selecting Will Johnson at 47. Slid due to those medical concerns. I mean, the 2023 tape from Will Johnson is stellar. Don't get me wrong, right? It's the kind of tape that again he should have been a top 5, top 10 pick, but early 2024 tape wasn't great, and then the injury stuff it's funky. So we'll see ultimately what Will Johnson could do if he can stay healthy in the league. I hope he can. I mean, he's a fun player, and we need more really good corners in the league. I feel like we don't have enough right now. There's a handful of guys that were supposed to be, and they just haven't really panned out quite yet. So, hoping to see a big shift here. So going back in time, because I finally have that information because I didn't see it before. Terrence Ferguson is the pick for the LA Rams, tight end out of Oregon. 6'5", 247. I think he's fine. I know some people were talking themselves into Ferguson as let's say you didn't draft a Loveland Warren type, and now you're in the second round. Can you get someone here? I think he's Oregon's leader, all-time leader in tight end receptions at 134, receiving touchdowns at 16. Ran the fastest 40, which is obviously alluring at 4.63 seconds for tight ends at the combine. There was a limit to the number of tight ends that were running at that combine. Warren, Loveland, they didn't actually run there. He can separate with his hands, and he has the tools to develop into a pretty effective route runner. Ultimately, though, I think he'll be fine in the league. Like, my bigger issue with him is he's much more of a one-speed athlete. He's not very shifty. He can't really I say trick you by ramping up and down that speed. His routes, they're pretty. He doesn't have enough wiggle, I think, at the top, or hide what he's doing very well with his route. Pretty below average in contested catches as well. I mean, so he can get open, but he doesn't always catch the ball if there's someone on him. And his blocking is not very good, and that's a big difference that separates him versus those top two guys. While Warren has his issues blocking, Loveland can get a little more mass on him, I think. But I mean, they're both very willing blockers and can block pretty well. That's not what Ferguson really does. You'll see some chip. Sometimes he'll go to chip, and it's just like he kind of leans in and then gets out on his route. It's not very good. And as weird as it is, actually, this is a fun stat for him. He's much better home game. So 80% of his catches in 2024 and 13 of his 16 touchdowns were at Oregon. So, I mean, that could be just happenstance or whatever, but I think that's crazy. And they also missed the second half of the UCLA game with the head injury. I mean, he missed the second half. I just like to highlight it, but so it's nothing too crazy. All right, more information from Breck Ackley, the Bears director of college scouting, when asked if Luther Burden third's grades was significantly above other guys at different positions. Yeah, so he was sitting up there, Breck Ackley said. I would say coming into the day, you obviously have those discussions. You have a clump of players and a cloud of players, and now we wait and see how they come off. But I would say, yeah, he was right there at the top, to where it was at the point where it was like, okay, this guy is a good football player, and he is right in position to take. So that's kind of a non-answer, if you're being honest. But still interesting nonetheless. So all right, a trade has happened. The Houston Texans have traded up to pick 48. They're now on the clock. The Texans earlier picked at 34, and they took Jaden Higgins out of ISU, just as a reminder there. And the pick is in. We'll see shortly who they took. So the Raiders keep trading back. They traded back earlier in this, and they traded back again. They're just trying to rack up picks. I love that for them. All right, this one hurts. All right, so first of all, the Texans moved it to pick 48, and they gave away pick 58 and their third round pick at 99 this year. And they have selected Minnesota tackle Ariante Ursary at number 48. So this one you could see coming. The Texans trade away Tunsil. Not a play issue. I mean, some people are pointing to last year was not his best year, but it was not a bad year. And people were pointing to some of his pre-snap penalties and some holding and things of that nature. Yeah, that was there. That's more of a mental thing, but it was more so locker room stuff. Apparently it was as bad as they had to literally bribe him to come to some practices and things of that nature. So that's why they moved on. They went out and they signed 2 tackles. I don't remember who they are off the top of my head. It doesn't really matter because they're not anyone that. I think one was Cam Robinson. Actually, now I got to look because now it's going to bother me. Both were a 1-year deal, though. So regardless, it wasn't anything that you need to heavily worry about. Cam Robinson on a 1-year deal. And then Trent Brown also was brought in. So they needed line help. Robinson's fine, but is this someone you want to? Is he someone you want to pay again? Probably not. So going out and getting Ursary, it was a good move on their part. And we'll see ultimately how Ursary does, but I feel like he's going to be just a solid tackle. Nothing you're writing home about, but fine. All right, we are ticking down time, getting closer and closer to that Bears' new second-round pick at pick 56. We got about 8 more picks left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 8 picks to go before that's announced. So just some general names that are still available that I still like. Mike Green, still there. Very curious as how his slide will continue. You're not going to take him because you got Burden now, but Jalen Noel, I'm blown away that he's still there. But he's chilling. Caleb Johnson, right? He hopefully is going to be sitting right in that perfect spot for the Bears to take him at 56. Landon Jackson, if you want an edge, I know he's a bit of a bull in a china shop, and I mean that just because he kind of doesn't have a full-out plan all the time. But I think the Bears are set up well because you bring him in and he can just be that third, if not even fourth, initially pass rusher and has time to hone his skills more. So I think he'd be great. Jordan Birch, another edge that I really like. And then we still have safety talk. Xavier Watts, he's still there. Super smart safety, really good. Out of Notre Dame, they just make safeties right there. And then Mabuka out of Texas, another safety that I'd be very interested in. So yeah, there's still plenty of talent, and going back to what we said, that's why I'm glad they Bears traded back at that point, because Nick Scourton forgot to mention him. I think his bag is actually better than like Shamar Stewart. I'm kind of known as a Shamar Stewart hater, and he's just blown up with his RAS. That's the biggest thing. I think Scourton has way more technical pass rushing than Stewart does. So that's another one. We talked about this in our live war room simulation. Oluwafemi Aldejo. He would be a pretty solid match for what Dennis Allen would want. 6'3", 261 pounds. All right, finally, the TV has caught up and announces that Ursary was taken. Jeez, this broadcast is nuts. Man, Ursary is just such a gigantic player. That's crazy. Just a wide individual. I almost feel like a perfect draft for the second round at this point would be if you could get Scourton and Caleb Johnson. I'm not the biggest Caleb Johnson guy in the world, but at this point, with the backs that are off, I mean, he makes a ton of sense. Why I've talked about not loving him? I mean, 4.57 40-yard time, nothing great. He's pretty inconsistent with his pad level, and he's not a home run hitter in that long speed. He doesn't have that long speed. Looseness is pretty average. He doesn't avoid direct hits super well. He's a work in progress as a blocker. He actually only averaged 2.4 pass blocking snaps per game in 2024. Like, that is not going to fly in the NFL. And let's say he was drafted by the Bears. Oh, pick us in for the Bengals. If that was the case for the Bears, I mean, DeAndre Swift is terrible at pass blocking. So, I mean, you need someone to be able to do it. All right. Bengals pick is in. All right, the Bengals take linebacker Demetrius Knight Jr. out of South Carolina. Makes a ton of sense. So far, there haven't been like a lot of head scratchers in this second round, but besides maybe Luther Bird, Demetrius Knight makes sense for them just from the fact that the Bengals are terrible up the middle. They had no defensive tackle, no linebacker help really at all. They just would get gashed on the ground. So having him just being able to play instinctive linebacker, fill gaps. He also actually has a pretty good knack for punching the ball out. He's okay in coverage, but he can get home on a quarterback if you need to blitz him. But this just makes a lot of sense just to shore up the middle of that very leaky interior. And Seattle's pick already in. I appreciate these teams. We know who we want. Let's go get them. Seahawks already. They took Gray Zabel in the first. It took Nick Amonware, who they traded up to go get. They need a receiver. I don't know what they have there. I mean, they traded away, DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett's no longer there. He actually signed with the Titans. I don't know. There's really a receiver here that makes like a lot of sense for them to get, but they need someone to catch passes there, and because they went ahead and they brought in Sam Darnold. So I mean, this might be a Knoll spot. This could be a Jack Besh spot. Excuse me. Kind of bigger bodied guy, 6 foot 214. That should be an interesting spot for him. I don't know that he necessarily needs to go here. I mean, he's more of a back a second, beginning a third guy, but I could see it. Kyle Williams' name has not been heard yet. He's someone that a lot of people like, and I thought would be maybe go surprisingly early, but that hasn't been the case so far. All right, more Luther Burden info. One wide receiver coach told Bruce Feldman that Luther Burden third is the best in this class with the ball in his hands. The feeling on the next back receiver is coming down to what flavor you like, whether it's more of a slot or pure outside receiver. Missouri's Luther Burden, who saw his production drop significantly from 23 to 24, he had 1,212 yards and down to 676, has been compared a lot to Deebo Samuel. I mean, that's a low-hanging fruit comparison, but that's fine. But the coaches I spoke to are reluctant to go that far in their evaluations of the 6 foot, 206 pounder who clocked in a 4.41 40 at the time combine. He's not as powerful or quite as good, wide receiver coach number 3 said. Well, at least it makes that tracks with what I was just saying. Burton did most of his work in the slot. When he's on the outside, can he win on the outside? I'm not sure he's quite as fast as people thought. Wide receiver coach number 2 said Burton is definitely the best with the ball in his hands of this year's class. He's not that polished, but I do think he's shown enough. He's so dynamic, special. I think he needs to work on the practice habits and things like that. So let's say that's true. Like that his issue, the drop from, he dropped 50% in terms of his production from 23 to 24. And, maybe not the best in terms of, being able to play on the outside. The Bears actually have a good setup for that because you have the other receivers to push him. He wants to earn his spot because at most he's wide receiver 3 right now. But you have, Alameda got signed this year. So he's 4 at this point. I mean, maybe 5 if you really want to roll with Duvernay ahead of him at this point. I mean, Duvernay's here more for special teams, but still, man, the Bears had a lot of people. It's crazy when you say them all out loud. But also, the coaching staff that the Bears have on offense, I mean, they were able to, and it's well known the issues with Jameson Williams, some of the gambling stuff, and then he had coming off the injury, some of the mental stuff coming off of that, and what they were able to do in terms of how Jameson produced last year. Why can't the same be done with Luther Burton? And we saw. I just retweeted. If you want to go look on Burton's Instagram, he had a picture of him 1 a.m. workout since he didn't get drafted in that first round. Is that a situation where he just he felt slighted? He was supposed to be a first round pick and he wasn't. Is that even enough to get him on the right track too? Some of those work habits, if we're going to believe, wide receiver coach number 2 that Bruce Feldman was talking about. The Seahawks at number 50, taking tight end Elijah Arroyo. So not a receiver, but a receiving tight end for Sam Darnold. I was fairly close with that. I'll take it. Coming up, by the way, Carolina is trading its pick to the Broncos. 51 going to the Denver Broncos. So the Carolina traded 57, 74, 111, and 230 to Denver Broncos sent 51 to the Panthers. My bad. Panthers are coming up. So Carolina trades away 57, 74, 111, and 230 to Denver and get 51, 85, 122, and 208. Someone is using the trade machine to getting all this multiple picks in there. Saw what the Bears did and they're trying to copy them. Panthers pick is officially in as well. Oh, heart's breaking. Okay. So the Panthers have traded up with Denver and they addressed the pass rush. They took Nick Scarton at number 51. That is a huge bummer. Was so close. 5 picks away from the Bears. I guess so now you have to have at least a mini conversation about gap, right? How much of a gap is there between a Scourton and a guy like a Landon Jackson, a Jordan Burch? Some of these guys haven't been taken yet. I'm trying to think. I think I would have Scourton ahead of Jackson. I have him behind Burch. I don't think it's enough of a gap that I'm super worried about it. The other part of it too, I mean, Scourton 257 pounds, but I mean Landon Jackson 264, Jordan Burch 279. It's not that Scourton doesn't fit, but they would fit technically better if we're just going by the normal archetype. So it's one of those ones. Is it disappointing, yes, but not something that I think anyone needs to be overly upset about. I'm saying that more to myself just to make sure I'm still happy. Coming up next, we'll have the Tennessee Titans on the clock, followed by Tampa, Green Bay, Chargers, and then finally Chicago gets to take that second pick of the second round. And then not too far again until the Bears pick again. And then y'all can stop listening to me because I'm not doing the third round because I got other stuff I got to do. Sorry about that. All right. I talked about him earlier. Titans are taking Oluwafemi Oladejo out of UCLA. I mean, he just, to me, he is, I mean, he's literally who the Bears just signed to be their second edge rusher. He compares very similarly in terms of size, frame, and play style. So, and it's funny because you see a lot of this where Olu just went and someone's going to say, "Oh man, bullet dodge. Glad we're not taking that person." Another one's going to say, "Well, that's a bummer. Really would have liked him." It's personal preference. It's taste at this point. We got to see how it all plays out, especially here in the second and third round. I mean, you're betting on upside of some of these players and taking guesses more than what you have in the first round, where there's a little more concreteness to it. So. Not a surprise to anyone, but Mike Green continues to slide. It's funny because and this is draft season talk, and we're seeing that play out. You're hearing that teams may not have cared as much about what was going on with Mike Green. That they were like, you know what, it's okay. We believe, because Mike Green was saying that he didn't do these things, or the case might be, so did they believe him? It seemed like they did, right? However, at this point in time, we're seeing that that's not the case. We're seeing that teams clearly cared about and believe that he probably did do these things. By the way, the Tampa pick is in. Just waiting to see who it's going to be. We're in a built-in TV timeout, hence why some of the news is slow to a crawl at this point. All right, but in terms of how recently some of this has gone, right? I mean, you're seeing a run on edge. I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers go edge here. They took Lucas Van Ness not all that long ago, right? The same draft that the Bears took Darnell Wright, but Lucas Van Ness is not panned out. So they need an edge. Tampa's funny. Tampa basically just said, "Screw it. We're gonna take a receiver, even though they didn't need a receiver. They just are gonna have fun with it." So here, I mean, Tampa could also go defensive line or edge rusher. They could go corner. They could go inside linebacker. So I think an edge could easily be coming off here. I mean, you could see 4 edge picks in a row here. Oh, okay. It's the second option I mentioned. Corner. The Buccaneers are selecting cornerback Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. Oh, another fun fact for Luther Burden, because basically that's all we have to talk about right now is Luther Burden. He went to Cary Grove. I didn't realize that. The Bears really do like their homegrown talent. That's crazy. Fun fact for Benjamin Morrison: he had 9 interceptions in 2022 and 2023. At the end of the day, though, injuries are why he slipped. Common thread, especially at corner right now. Well, a lot of the injuries are why some of these guys are falling. I mean, that's across the board. Let's be real. It's football. People get hurt. But there does seem to be a bit of a shift where I think there's more. It seems like there's more injuries or nagging stuff, and part of that is, I mean, the speed of the game, the power of the game has changed in college. Guys aren't also at places as consistently, so when you're bopping around like you are, being on a consistent program is tough because every strength conditioning coach is going to handle things differently, whether that things are going to be different also in terms of your nutrition. And don't forget, especially in this class, a lot of these guys are from that COVID year. So that's why you're seeing so many redshirt guys, 4th, 5th year redshirts. It's a weird mix. Some of these guys, yes, shouldn't come out earlier because of skill. You got some guys who you kind of got to ignore that. And they actually are good, but they just hung around for other reasons. But with that being said, I mean, that is more time that you're playing football and potentially build up some of these injuries as well. So, again, you combine COVID, you combine the NIL, transfer portal, all these things. I think that is part of the reason why you're seeing some of this increase in injuries, just in my humble opinion. Consistency is key when it comes to maintaining the body. Another fun fact for that Notre Dame cornerback, Benjamin Morris, who was drafted by the Bucs, his dad played with Todd Bowles in Washington. I think he's had his hip scoped twice. Might have been his injury. I'd have to double check that. But the Packers pick is in. Closing in on the Bears being up again. So the Packers took Matthew Golden earlier in this draft. How do I say this without coming across as a hater? The problem with Matthew Golden, at least in my opinion, I still had him as the second best receiver in this class. The problem is, I mean, he was a 1-year starter at Texas, and it wasn't even all that productive of a year. He's got pretty average size, but he doesn't play small. He's a good athlete in and out of breaks, good body control, and he actually averaged 20 yards per catch in 10 of the 16 games he played. But he's not super dynamic in space, and I think he can get kind of stuck at the top of routes if he faces a physical defensive back. Inconsistent blocker and can get pushed off his spot. He didn't play special teams coverage, so you're not bringing him in, and he can't help there early, which is a bummer. I just think he also has too many drops. I feel like it's an interesting trajectory because it was supposed to be Isaiah Bond who was the guy at Texas, and then Bond didn't really pan out, and Golden just kind of took the reins. So to me, it was more of a because they had to have someone versus he was truly their number one. He played 76% of his snaps wide, 23% of them in the slot. he's fine. I just think you took him, and now it's that joke like, how many number one receivers do you need Green Bay? And the answer is you need one, and I don't think he's going to be a wide receiver one. I think I would comp him as a poor man Stephon Diggs. So take that with what you will. All right, the Bears are on the clock again as of 1 minute ago, according to Jacob Infante. If you're not following him, please do so. You absolutely should be. Jacob is actually in Green Bay right now, so that's why he's like actually actively seeing this. It's crazy though. Like the broadcast is showing the Packers picking, and apparently the Bears are on the clock. The Packers have selected Anthony Belton out of NC State. Tackle, by the way. 6'6", 336 pounds, ran a 5.26 40-yard dash. He is the 9th tackle on Dane Brugler's big board, behind guys like Ozzie Trapillo, Charles Grant, but ahead of guys such as Chase Lunt and Cameron Williams. Big man, absorbs defenders, struggles versus speed, though. So, maybe Bears can get some speed on the edge here. That'd be very helpful. Something I just want to highlight this because, obviously going against the NFC North, these picks will be very interesting for everyone. So he's a 3-year starter at NC State, lined up at left tackle for them. And actually he started all three. Oh, found it. Found my notes. He started all 32 games at left tackle in the ACC. He is massive individual. I mean, just massive, just a wide frame. Pretty good, solid lateral movement, and he relies on his long arms. He actually has a 33 and 7/8 inch arms. 34 and 5/8 was what they measured the pro day. Plays as powerfully as you would expect to push defenders where he wants. He just washes out defenders on down blocks to create running room. Pretty actually impressive foot speed, in my opinion. And he pretty actively looks for contact. Like he wants to find the next block. But he's got pretty average body control. So he'll play get himself out of position, and he'll lunge at defenders sometimes on those blocks. Inconsistent punch, hands can get a bit too wide, and he was penalized 8 times each of the past 3 seasons. So, I still think the Packers need more offensive line help, especially at tackle. They don't have for sure answers across that line. So, I'm okay with it. As a Bears fan, I'm actually kind of happy with him going here. From a Charger selection happening right now, they took Trey Harris, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Big, smooth mover, tempo and routes, but a hand catcher. This was a guy who I would have wanted the Bears to go after without him, except they got Burden. They need it. They need more receiver help. Obviously, Ladd McConkey had a great year for them, and my fantasy team loved it. But they didn't have Keenan Allen. Why am I blanking on the receiver that just absolutely sucks there and can't catch a cold? Quentin Johnson, Jesus. Quentin Johnson. And then, of course, you have the corpse of Mike Williams. So bringing in Trey Harris was imperative. Now you also have him. You have Najee Harris, and you have Amarian Hampton. That's way more talent than was there previously for that team. So that's big for the Chargers. I like that pick. That's fun. Nick Moriano tweeted, "Just wait until you guys see the Luther Burden press conference. I'm excited. What a tease." And then once the Bears pick, the Lions actually will have traded up to pick 57 with the Broncos. So we're waiting with bated breath for that one. And now we have a TV timeout. Cool. More likely than not, we'll get the pick on the Twitter sphere because of the. Here we go with the 56th overall pick. The Bears are choosing Boston College, Ozzie Trapillo. All right. It's funny. I gotta just having this conversation with one of my buddies about Ozzie. So potentially now we're going to see a run on tackles. Maybe that's what the Lions are trading up for. Doubt it, but we'll see. So for Ozzie, 6'8", 316 pounds. He's a fifth-year senior, 23 years old. 3-year starter at Boston College. Polls his alma mater. He was the right tackle spot in Bill O'Brien's offense, which used a mix of zone and gap schemes. He actually decided to stay in Boston College, even though he had some offers from other powerhouses. Dane Brugler had him projected as a third-round pick. He's tall, functional length, wide base, moves pretty well for his size, and he has the feet to protect the corner. He's got really good hand placement and grip strength. 0 penalties on 772 offensive snaps in 2024. Body control makes him pretty efficient, and quality starting experience at both tackle positions, since he actually did play both left and right tackle. Primarily right, though. Problem is he can play a bit high after contact, and he's guilty of drifting at times in pass protection with his knees will buckle when he tries to recover. He looked more comfortable at right tackle than left tackle, pretty significantly so, but at least he's done it. So you have a break in case of emergency for, at this point for your left tackle spot. He missed 2 games in 2022 with a knee injury and 1 as a junior with a lower body issue in 2023. So pretty stable, pretty solid player who you can bank on. So we'll see how this goes. At a minimum, you have depth now at tackle. Someone that if Braxton can't play because of injury and you're not sold on Karan or something like that, if next year, you let Braxton walk and you just have this competition between a Karan and Ozzie, it'll be you have options. I'm not saying there's anything outstanding here, but you have options. In that trade, the Lions trade up over the Ravens and Raiders with the Broncos. So the Broncos traded 57, 230 to the Lions in exchange for 60 and 130. So the Broncos get a 100 pick upgrade, so the Lions can move 3 spots. Very interesting. That's crazy. Seems like a lot. Hopefully. You gotta love that one of the facts they threw up on NFL Network for the Bears is have not finished better than 500 since 2018. Cool. Thanks, NFL Network. And now we got Seth Rollins about to announce that Ozzie pick. What a world we live in. All right, we are winding down, getting closer and closer to the Bears' final pick of the second round. Now, Seth Rollins is really taking up all of the time. This is pretty crazy. And I don't have the sound on for this. I have no idea what he's saying, so it'll be pretty interesting. I'm gonna listen to this later because it is a monologue. I do want that belt though. He's got this like WWE Chicago Bears belt, like that I need. So if anyone can find that belt and just wants to like send me like the belt, feel free, just for funsies. All right. So the Lions, who trade up with Denver, took Georgia guard Tate Ratledge at number 57. So not a tackle, but there is a run on offensive line talent here, which is a shame because I actually really like Tate Ratledge. So that sucks that he's going to the Lions. All right. Well, we did this with the Packers. So let's go to some notes for Tate, just so we know what's happening. So Dane Brugler actually has Tate Ratledge as his third overall ranked guard, ahead of Jonah Savania, but also Miles Frazier, Mark Smabeau, guys who haven't been taken yet. Tate measures in at 6'7". Jeez, 308 pounds. I forgot he was 6'7". That number twisted me again. But he was a 4-year starter at Georgia, and was a pretty solid right guard in that system. They did both zone and gap scheme. He's, as obviously, like I said, just mentioned, tall, pretty solid, thick guy. Latches on the run game and will drive you. Plays with a flat back, which is pretty impressive considering how tall he is. And I like his fluidity and his hip mobility. Rarely fooled by stunts and plays with vision. Penalized 3 times for the past 2 seasons. And a big locker room guy. I mean, like, this is a Detroit Lions pick. He's like a goofball, funny, but when push comes to shove, guy you want to go to battle for. So this is it in terms of being a Lions guy. A bit of shorter arms. He has 32.5-inch arms, and he leaves edges vulnerable. Occasionally drops his eyes into contact. He missed at least 1 game each of the past 4 seasons. He had a Liz Frank injury to the right foot, 4 plays in his first career start. He needed season-ending surgery. He missed 1 game as a sophomore because of a shoulder subluxation. Junior year, he left because of a bone bruise, left ankle injury in 2024, where he got a tightrope surgery, sidelined him for 4 games. So he's never missed extended time. So he's a tough dude. You just wonder at some point, does something happen where, you finally miss extended? I mean, obviously he had the Liz Frank where he missed the rest of the season, but does he have something else that like knocks him out for an extended period of time? But super fun dude. Going back to Ozzie, he actually had an RAS of 8.89. 10-yard split was a 1.78. And he's, like I said, that 8.89 ranked 169 out of 1,507 for offensive tackles. I mean, this guy's pure tackle, Ozzie. He's too tall to play guard, so that's what you're getting. If you know him, I would go follow I'm Bearing Down. I'll go on Twitter if you're not, at I am Bearing Down. He's posting highlights for everyone that the Bears are drafting, so you can go see. Luther Burden's going to be up there, and obviously you're going to have Ozzie up there as well, and then whoever the Bears take with their upcoming pick will also be up there. All right, the Raiders. Their pick is in. They're selecting TC wide receiver Jack Besh at number 58. Much needed because at this point, your best receiver is not a receiver; it's tight end in Brock Bowers. Fantastic, by the way. Obviously, nothing against Brock, but really your next main receiver is Jacoby Myers. So you needed a receiver at this point in time. So good on them for doing that. And here it is. Finally, Baltimore has taken Mike Green. The fall stops. I hate the Ravens. I say that in the best way possible. So they got Malachi Starks and they got Mike Green. And watch, Mike Green, they'll just create, it'll be the perfect culture. Harbaugh is going to just make sure that he's doing nothing funky or nefarious. And he's going to be like a dang all pro. They watch a guy that could have been a top 15 pick just fall into their laps at pick 59. Just so Ravens. All right. Well, with Mike Green off the board at pick 59, that leaves two more picks before Chicago, Denver and the Commanders. So now we can be back on Bears talk, right? Because you still need a run back. Is this where Caleb Johnson finally goes? Or do you dive into that edge class? I mean, right now the Bears are just throwing me all for a loop. Going with Ozzie, going with Luther Burden. So who the heck knows what's going to happen here? Right? But just take Shedeur Sanders. Why not? I'm kidding, of course. Please don't take Shedeur Sanders. So let's say, for the sake of argument, you don't take running back here. Let's say it's whatever you just want to say it's edge. Then you're looking with the Bears' next pick, which is in the third round, 10th pick in the third round. I mentioned a couple names before. Man, this running back class is so good. I could list so many names of guys I like. Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's do it. Dylan Sampson, really like him. Jordan James, really like him. RJ Harvey, really like him. Trevor Etienne, really like him. Bashal Tutin, love him. Love him. Jarquez Hunter, really like him. Cam Scatterboot, gross. I don't want that. Go away. That's probably the one. DJ Giddens, enjoy him. Not love, enjoy. Ollie Gordon, really like him. Devin Neal. Devin Neal is peak. I think he is like Dave. I think he is Dave Montgomery. And I say that he'll get you the yards he needs to get, and that's kind of it. He's not going to get you any more. He doesn't really have the long speed to get any more. He ran a 4.58 40-yard dash at the combine, but he's got good vision. He can get to the second level. Productive on swing and reel routes. Strings together good moves and start ability, but he's not going to grind out extra yards because with that frame, even though he has a frame that you think he could do it, he doesn't really drop a shoulder and punish defenders. He was more like a sidestep. And I think he's a little overly patient at times. But Devin Neal, another guy who's pretty interesting. And I can keep going. I won't. I mean, I will say two more. Jaden Blue, he's good, more of your third down back type. And then Taj Brooks. I actually really like Taj Brooks. He might be the latest taken running back that has a chance to be like a dude. And I mean, by a dude, I mean like a solid starter for years kind of guy. I just really like Taj Brooks. And we're in another commercial break, so we're just chilling at this point, waiting for more picks to roll through. So close. to the third second-round pick for the Bears. Who would have thunk it? Bears have 3 second-round picks in this draft and didn't have to trade back. Fun fact from Kevin Fishbane, because he's full of fun facts. In 2024, Bears offensive tackle Ozzie Trapillo had 0 penalties on 772 snaps. Pretty good, especially at tackle. I mean, guard, maybe you could make the argument just because you're inside and you can get away with more of that stuff. But dang, that's crazy. All right, let's talk NFC North here while we're waiting for more picks to roll in here. So, as things sit, Vikings got better inside, right? They took Donovan Jackson. I don't think he's starting right away, but his guard tackle versatility, it's actually very annoying that they got him. But then you have the JJ McCarthy question. I mean, he looked solid in preseason, but there's so little that we know about that situation. But at the end of the day, you have Justin Jefferson, right? At the end of the day, you have Aaron Jones. And at the end of the day, you have Kevin O'Connell. Green Bay is Green Bay. And I just say that because if they're very Jekyll and Hyde with Jordan Love, are you going to get Jordan Love of 2 years ago who looked like a top 5 quarterback? Or are you going to get Jordan Love of last year who number 12 quarterback maybe? And that matters. The difference between 12 and 5 with that team matters because the defense is okay. And as I talked about earlier in the show, the wide receivers are okay. It's a bunch of twos. Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Dontavian Wicks. They would be fantastic twos on almost every other team, but just not enough oomph there. And then you got the Lions. Brain drain. That's the biggest thing there. You lost your offensive coordinator. You lost your defensive coordinator. You still and everything else is still there. But I mean, you saw take the playoff game against the Commanders. I mean, Jared Goff threw 3 interceptions in that game. Was it the best called game by Ben Johnson? No, but we can see the limitations of a Jared Goff. He has at least one of those games every season and then every playoff. We saw it against the Texans where he threw, I think it was 5 interceptions, and then we saw it again in the playoff. So as things sit, this is an opportunity for the Bears to make some noise. It really is. And it sounds just like overly optimistic Bears fandom stuff. And I know I've said this in the past, and if you watched where I first started off with Chicago Audible with Will DeWitt and Nick Moriano, I think I was the most likely to overly pick in a positive way their schedule in terms of wins and losses. And also I will say their schedule sucks this year, so take that with a grain of salt. But at least in terms of in your division, I mean, you can see them winning definitely more games than they did last year, especially when you think about how close some of those games were last year. I mean, even the debacle on Thanksgiving, that Lions game, right? They still had a chance to win that game at the end, even though it was just incredibly embarrassing and just the worst thing that's happened in a while. But it also got Eberflus out the door, so gotta appreciate the little things. All right, Jacob Infante is tweeting out the Bears are on the clock again, so at least in Green Bay, picks have already been done, and here we go. R.J. Harvey went to the Broncos. That we knew was gonna. I thought we knew it was gonna be running back. Interesting that he went ahead of a Caleb Johnson. Interesting that he went ahead of even there we go. Jeez. I like a Dylan Sampson, but if if I'm gonna trust anyone picking running backs for their offense and what they need, and it's gonna be Sean Payton. So, and I do like RJ Harvey. I mean, he's got some wiggle to him. He's got the explosion that you want. He was a 2-year starter. Really patient when he runs. Allows his blocks to get set up. Makes some sharp cuts, spin out tackle attempts. Really elusive burst, creates more yards than you would expect him to get. He actually led the FBS in 23.3% of his 2024 carries, resulting in a gain of 10 yards or more. And he's consistently productive. Finished number 2 in school history all-time rushing yards. Surpassed 100 yards rushing in 16 of the final 28 games. So just I like him. I know I keep saying this about pretty much every running back in this class, besides my not hate but slight disgruntledness of Trayvon Henderson. But RJ Harvey is a fun player. You also gotta wonder, will the Bears try to trade down again? And I say that just because there are so many good players still left on the board. I mean, someone's got to want to trade up, of course. All right, and also the pick right before the Bears, the Washington Commanders took Amos. More specifically, Trey Amos, the cornerback out of Ole Miss. All right, cornerback off the board. And the Bears, as mentioned earlier, are, at least in terms of the stream, on the clock. All right. Waiting here to hear on. So they need to still officially announce the Amos pick for the Commanders, since that just kind of got leaked out. And then we can wait for a leak for the Bears, unless they do another commercial break, which would just be very NFL. You wonder at what point Dennis Allen is going to get like any love. because he just not a single defensive player. All right, here it is. Bears are choosing Texas defensive tackle Shamar Turner with the 62nd overall pick in the round 2. Nice addition to the middle of the defensive line. Dennis Allen finally gets in on the action. All right. Actually, I'm happy about that. I mocked Shamar, calling him the better Shamar, to the Bears in one of my mock drafts. And I'm going to get my notes up for that because I accidentally just closed it. All right, Shamar Turner, defensive tackle, Texas A&M. And like I said, AKA the better Shamar. 6'3", 290 pounds with 33 and 5/8 inch arms. He can be a tough assessment because he falls into a bit of a tweener category in terms of his measurables, but he's well filled out in terms of his lean mass. The past year played 377 snaps in the B gap, but also played 92 in the A gap and 48 over the tackle. This guy is all gas, no brakes, with violence as his main objective, with a quick first step. Never-ending series of slaps and counters during his rush. Capable of rushing from a variety of alignments, can work through gaps or take on single blocks well. His pressure rate is not where you want it because of his lack of length. On the negative side, he will get swallowed up by double teams, and you'd like to see better bend out of him on his rush. And it costs his team too many 15-yard penalties during his career. Can be a bit of a hothead. If I would say kind of a Nnamdi Madubuike kind of vibe in terms of like that play style. If we flip over to the Beast with Dane Brugler, he was the 6th overall defensive tackle for Dame. He was a 3-year starter. This is now from the Beast, some of these notes. 3-year starter at Texas A&M, played 3 technique roles as senior in a 4-man front, logging snaps everywhere from 0 technique to 7 technique, kind of as I alluded to earlier. Explosive in his lower half. He added 30 pounds before the 24 season, but didn't sacrifice initial quickness to squeeze gaps. Flashes a quick swim move and violent club rips. Effective on stunts and games that get him free. Grew up idolizing Ray Lewis and plays with similar on-field violence, which I'm glad Jane and I are seeing kind of the same thing. This is fun. Negatives. Adrenaline is overflowing and compete skill border on reckless. Flagged 7 times for personal foul penalties. Is actually ejected from a game in 2023 for throwing punches. Sloppy tendencies as a tackler. He has double-digit misses in 2024 tape. And then off-the-field decision-making will be scrutinized after he was arrested and charged with reckless driving during his junior season. He faced internal discipline and didn't miss any time. One thing to highlight, I forgot to say from my notes, stress fracture during the 2024 fall camp, that had a rod inserted and played through the injury, but it didn't heal right, and he missed part of the draft process. It was a little funky. Previously, he played through a torn labrum over the second half of the 2023 season and underwent off-season surgery. And then he had surgery also for a shin injury in 2023. So some of that recklessness, it kind of caught up with him. So I like the pick because it gives you some nasty, which I like, but he has to hone it. He absolutely does. Whether it's physically just so that he doesn't kill himself, but also, mentally, right? You cannot have that many penalties. You just can't. We just talked about Ozzie earlier in terms of how he didn't have a hold or, at all in his snaps. We have to channel that. We have to channel that aggression into positive. All right. That's what all we're going to have here for me. We covered way more time than I thought because of that trade back. The Bears will be up again in the 3rd round. So, keep on watching the draft. I'll be tweeting some stuff out at West Sports BT. So follow along. Oh, yeah, I forgot. No, they don't have a 3rd round pick. They trade up. Duh. But they do have the 4th round pick, so they're done for the day. Beautiful. We're gonna wrap it up. That's all I got. Thanks again for tuning in to Second City Gridiron. Appreciate that. Keep following for all of our live content. Jacob Infante is going to be putting out some awesome write-ups and videos and all that stuff on all these players. And then we're also going to have individual videos. JB and all are going to do some great work on that. So keep an eye out. Bear down, everyone.